Where's your mic, honey?
Before we start our first session of readings, I have a few announcements to make. The University of New Mexico sucks. But on the other hand, we'd like to congratulate the experimental group of the John Dufresne Writers Workshop. So, without further ado, we'd like to introduce our first reader, Peter. All right.
Fabulous.
Try to be brief.
No, that's good. That's great. You take up. You're in charge now.
Yeah.
Every
Thank
night.
you, Jim Bob.
Every
I always want
night.
to say Jim Bob on camera. Yeah, we'll do it. So, yeah. Well, thank you everybody for being here, sharing our home, and bringing together everybody. You know, just like the Taos conference was still going on, except more intimate and more fun, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to thank everybody for being here.
Thanks for
And
having us.
I'm going to just read a couple short things that I wrote, and I had to search a little bit because so many of you have read a bunch of my stuff already. So this piece I wrote in Era Petra on the island of Crete in Greece last year. Peggy and I took a trip there. Basically to kind of go to some places my favorite author, Nikos Kazantzakis, is from. He wrote Zorba the Greek there, and so I got to play like Zorba on the beach and stuff. So.
Cool.
He did. I have pictures of him dancing on the beach.
Yeah, recreating the Zorba dance. So.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah, so this was like a lot of the things I've written, and I said it earlier today, you know, that come from dreams. And so in Era Petra, I woke up one morning after having this dream and wrote this. It's loosely based on the dream. It's called Green Shells. My stepdad finally returned. Don't get me wrong, I was thrilled when he appeared. This time determined to make everything right. I sensed it in the set of his strong, handsome chin, the ever-fine physique, tan and lean, his full shock of black hair. He always had the confidence of a 007. There was a lot to be done. He worked fast, and I thought intelligently, though this time with a certain finesse lacking in the completion of each task. First, he welded the weather vane, just to have it tilt again as soon as he came down from the roof. My stepdad pitched hay, then shod both horses. Still, they had a doubtful look in their eyes, as if he really wasn't there for them. I didn't think about why he had left, how long he was gone, only that he looked better now than last I saw him. He breezed all around me, the mountain gray and sky close and low and dark, perfect for what he was doing. I kept losing track of him, daydreaming about Mom's expression when she got home, her thrall and fear that such a miracle could happen right here in our little place. His thin-lipped smile reassured me, stern as always, igniting my admiration and insecurities. My stepdad always encouraged me, even when he thought I was screwing up. That's what it felt like this time. In his own begrudging manner, he doled out respect, not wanting to hold up his own mistakes, like being a chain smoker, as an example. Next, he stopped the drip, drip, drip of a leaky faucet. I went inside to learn how he does it, but before the door opened, I knew by the smell of his cigarette he was done, so I never did figure it out. One of the things he left when he went was a Zippo lighter. My stepdad was giddy to make it spark again. After he left, Mom used it for quite a while, until the odor of having to fill it was finally too sad. She put it away on the green shelves next to her hope chest. It's one of the things he tried to fix, the green shelves. That's where his remains were, the custom hunting knife engraved with his initials, a turquoise and silver bolo, beige Stetson, snakeskin boots, reading glasses, patched coveralls, brittle leather gloves with worn-out fingertips, and the crucifixion his mother told him never to take off, so he didn't, not even at the swimming hole or when making love. My stepdad was full of contradictions. eager to discuss religion and politics, though never with the mind of changing his beliefs, or listening raptly to what he called my passing fancies. "You don't know dog crap from apple butter," he'd tell me, the intensity of those marble brown eyes forcing me to take my own ideas seriously. He didn't even object when Mom announced her agnosticism. Never seen anything like it. How a couple could agree on something so basic, how a couple could disagree on something so basic and still delight in their luck at finding each other. As far as I could tell, his love for her never diminished. It struck me how often I dreamed of Mom and my stepdad reunited, despite his mistakes that cost him so much time. Hope stored in a shadowy space I walk by every day. It's easier for me to leave it on the green shelves than consciously stir up what might have been. The tractor wouldn't start, and fear washed over me, thinking I must have drained the battery. When he grumbled and walked away, I thought I should have used my car to jump it. My stepdad never liked my old beaters, said I was a menace on the road. Dust from the driveway filled my nostrils, and for a moment I hoped Mom would appear. It happened again when I saw the glider love seat swaying on the front porch, before I realized he had just oiled the squeaky mechanism. There were an infinite number of things that could be done, so I followed a step or two behind, trying not to be an irritant, while my stepdad fashioned a new hinge for the corral gate, knocked rust off the axe, chopping kindling, pitched hay for the horses again, installed a dimmer switch in the dining room. He'd made the chandelier out of antlers from bucks he'd hunted down and killed, 16 points total. My stepdad loved telling stories about his exploits, thrived on being the center of attention, was so good at it, I often didn't know he was acting. He had this embarrassing habit of injecting innuendo into his tales. Ethnic, racial, and sexual, was undiscriminating, in that respect at least. I wrote it off as a generational flaw, because he loved and cared for us so well. Out back, I came across a rectangular ditch, 6 feet deep, and in the oblique evening light, could just make out the green of more shelves. They were bound together with white plastic straps, 3 or 4 of them, as if brand new from the store, unused, and intuitively I knew they were in additional green shelves to go next to Mom's hope chest. When I looked up, so many things had been fixed, but as soon as he moved on, most of what he did came undone. I got on my stomach, reached down, tried to lift the bundle of green shelves. They were stuck in the mud, sucked into the earth. Over and over, I tried to get my stepdad's attention, like a film clip repeating itself. He did not seem interested in my discovery, was completely occupied, moving determinedly from one task to another, and back again. I looked into the ditch at the green shelves, imagined him doing things Mom would have loved for him to have been able to do all the time he was gone. Sharpen her cutlery, electrify the sewing machine, rototill her garden, paint the potting shed, skunk-proof the chicken coop, fix the broken string on her piano. He would spit-shine his rattlesnake boots before taking her two-stepping at the country western dance hall in town on Saturday night. Mornings they drank strong black coffee in front of the picture window, watching cotton-tailed deer munch on the back 40, oblivious to the danger he posed. I pictured him mixing cocktails under the giant blue spruce, acting out his tales for friends after supper, everyone wondering what inappropriate twist he would come up with this time. Tugging again at the shelves, I slipped headfirst into the ditch. In the shadows, I saw the new green shelves installed next to Mom's hope chest. The boots, bolo, coveralls, reading glasses, everything coming to life. Mom and my stepdad dancing along a shiny green floor, drinking and smoking with lively, loving eyes for each other, full of vigor in the prime of their lives, exactly the way someday I would want to remember them. They twirled around me. Their laughter boomed, not a care in the world. A belief in the memory of a possibility, sitting on green shelves, passed by every day. I wanted more for that space in those shadows, more green shelves to fill. I unsheathed the custom engraved hunting knife and cut the plastic bands. On one of the new green shelves, I put Mom's coffee cup, her thimble, the diamond bracelet he'd given her that she hadn't worn since he left until yesterday. On another shelf, her metronome, spade, the diary explaining how he never took off his crucifixion. Somehow, I even managed to get Mom's hope chest onto a green shelf. My eyes fluttered. It took several seconds to realize where I was, what was happening. The first light of a new day insisted I pay attention. Silver hair on my temples reflected in the vanity mirror. The first day after my stepdad had been gone all those years. The first day after Mom's funeral. It's not really real. It just makes me cry. Okay, one more, a little different. I don't know if it's really much lighter, but we'll give it a shot. So, this is a different thing. I don't know about you guys, but characters get a hold of me, right? And so, there's a character in here. It's not the main character that I've written some other stories about. And I tend to do that where I get a character and then, you know, like kind of like Teddy was saying, where she had to write everybody around Jackson's Pond, right? So, this is called Victoria. The film broke again. That's enough. The giggling and droning in Victoria Peel's 4th grade classroom continued until she flipped on the lights. The boy shut off the projector and fumbled with the splice tape. Victoria wondered why she was always giving him the benefit of the doubt. It certainly wasn't his classwork. He was restless, unfocused, with a loud, high-pitched voice constantly out of turn. But he did remind her of Luke before the divorce, innocent with an independent streak. From the moment they could form sentences, she challenged Luke and her older sister Carla to form their own opinions, then was taken aback when her children exerted themselves before their teens. Carla was more conservative, gravitating towards Sever, her father, but Luke was all Victoria, peering over the edge of any cliff he could find. After the final bell, Principal Dale Stevens was waiting by Victoria's car. Going all modern on us, huh? She waited against the rushing throng of kids. Dale took the keys out of her hand, studied her new hairstyle before unlocking the car door. She could tell he thought it was too short. Victoria could feel him watching her stockinged legs shimmer when she slid behind the wheel. Not my style, but it looks good on you. Victoria started the motor. How about Friday? Love to buy you dinner. There's a new... I'm sorry, Dale. Victoria grimaced. She should have had a ready answer. Dale was a rising star, blonde with a square jaw and close-cropped military-style hair, the youngest principal in the district. They both transferred from Douglas High to Harding Junior High 3 years ago. He was psychology. She taught English. Now Victoria was single. It must have seemed natural to pursue her. You're hard on a guy's self-esteem. I can't right now. Vicky, it's been what, 8-9 months? Unless you guys are getting back together. No. Victoria's head dropped. Disappointed her reflexes weren't more under control. It's not. I just can't. Dale searched for some explanation in her face, not quite nodding in agreement. Okay, I'm here if you change your mind, or just need someone to talk to. It doesn't have to be a date. Thank you, Dale. Give my best to Carla and Luke. The streets seemed unhurried that afternoon, and though she was on a strict schedule, Victoria didn't think about being late. The parking garage was almost empty. Walking ellipses down the ramps, even in heels, felt steadier than taking the elevator. She had papers to grade, dreaded her next round of pills. The doors of St. Anthony Hospital opened automatically. Victoria took the elevator to the 4th floor, psycho ward, and checked herself back in. For years she had plotted how to leave Sever. It became a private internal game, her own national pastime. Victoria wouldn't admit how bad things were until the sunny afternoon Sever roughed her up, then called the men in white coats. After her release 2 weeks later, the first words that trembled out of her mouth, I want a divorce. Please leave now. She cried watching him back out of the triple-car garage. But this time, it was her decision. The divorce, Luke's grades plummeting, Carla projecting anger and resentment. Dr. Outlaw finagled special arrangements so she could keep teaching. Check out at 6:45 a.m., in by 3:25 p.m., Monday through Friday. It was unheard of, and Victoria felt resentment from the staff, the white coats. If Dale, anyone at school, found out, she was sure to lose her teaching certificate. Even Victoria would balk at having Carla or Luke taught by someone under full-time psychological supervision. The teaching certificate was the one time in her life Victoria had followed through, the beginning of the end of her marriage, her stability. She lasted 12 days before Sever moved back in with the kids and she got her own apartment. Sever was the provider, the tech wizard, Mr. Everything. The fruits of Victoria's one act of courage were a nagging fear that there was nothing inside her for her to be. After an hour of grading papers, Carla, Luke, and Sever arrived for a visit. The only lights left in her life gave Victoria one-word answers about grades, a new boyfriend, being cut from the baseball team. What are teenagers supposed to say to a mother they discover is crazy? When are you going back to your apartment? Luke finally ventured. Soon, not long, I promise. Mom needs time to get well, son, Sever clarified. Can I live there? Victoria searched her children's skin for signs of abuse, listened to the timbre of their voices. I'm not splitting you and Carla up, Sever announced. I don't care, Carla said. She wore Sever's disgust as embarrassment. Your father and I love both of you very much. Never doubt that. Carla glared at her mother. Then why did you divorce us? Luke held back tears, tried to steady his lips. Victoria felt she was watching her son build emotional walls for a solitary prison. It took her a few moments to realize she was crying. That's enough. Let's go. Your mother needs to rest. Sever took hold of Luke's arm and led his children out of the room.
Very good.
David,
Such light stuff, Pete.
David.
David. A couple more brief announcements.
Couple more that you just thought of.
It is a truism, there's a couple of debts that we can never adequately repay. One to Pete and Peggy for hosting this. Thank you, Pete and Peggy. And one to John and Cindy for stepping out and saying, we can do this. Second brief announcement, those of the group who have relocated, be aware that there will be no housekeeping service. David.
You're gonna be ribbed about this.
I knew we'd hear something about it eventually.
Those in
We're
the
not
bottom-
abandoning you. We're close.
those in the bottom apartment will have Cindy's house.
They're looking for a summer job. I'm just going to read a couple pages from my novel that most of you guys are familiar with, that I workshopped last year in was it Santa Fe?
What?
Yeah, Santa Fe. Yeah, and it's going to be published in the United Kingdom sometime later this year, which means that you probably won't be able to buy it.
Amazon, UK.
Amazon UK.
UK.
Let's all go to England.
But the shipping fees.
Okay, let's go to England.
Well, Rosie and I decided like we're gonna fly over there, and it's a small press, and we'll just fill up a bunch of suitcases and come
Bring
back,
'em
and I
over.
will mail you guys copies of my novel.
Hold on. We're recording this.
And if they stop me at the customs, I'll just have to say like I'm
the author. I need.
Yeah, there's nothing in this. Is nothing. It's just
Sign one for them.
It's
Sign
copies
one
of
for
my
them.
Not published in the United States for censor reasons.
Yeah. Okay. So this is it's called retitled South of Hannah, and it's about an 8-year-old jazz piano prodigy and this guy who's like her father figure mentor, trying to keep her out of trouble. They're blowing through the outskirts in his father's car. The alignment is shot to hell and the steering wheel buzzes so bad, Cole Howland has to jam his kneecap under the shaft to keep the Buick from veering into a ditch. Lily squirms in the back seat, jostling for a better look at the cows. She's a twig of a gal, 9 come November, with short, pale legs and big owlish eyes. Beyond the windshield, the sky is a trout's belly spackled with cirrus clouds. Billboards flash ads for cheap housing developments, car dealerships, and gun shops. Ads for retirement communities whose names boast of the very utopias their golf courses have helped eviscerate. Fairview, Tierra Linda, Alta Vista. Are we lost, Lily says, as they pass a browning field of piebald heifers. Of course not. This here's the scenic route. Cole scoffs at the honeycomb subdivisions, gated entrances with dancing multicolored balloons. He's driving her to the ravine where his favorite musician, Hal Torrance, once composed a pastoral tune praising the countryside and lamenting the city sprawl. From what I can see, Cole says, looks like his worst fears have come true. A few months from now, there won't be any country left. The back road takes them farther south. The new houses momentarily give way to more farmland. What about the cows? Where will they go? Lily says. Somebody will take them, I'm sure. Cornstalks poke up in measured rows. From beneath the dead pecan leaves, broomweed and green-eyed daisies have burst into color. They're tearing through land shackled by ballast and railroad ties, land divided by barbed wire fences and taller game-proof fences, where oil company execs used to fly around in private choppers with Ruger semi-automatics, mowing down oryx, red stag, and mouflon. Nothing belongs here anymore, Cole thinks, not even the cows. Will they go to the people who took Ludwig, Lily says? Cole tenses. Ludwig was her English bulldog. Her mother found him in the neighbor's pool, drowned. How he got there, nobody knows. But his stubby legs couldn't paddle. His head too big to keep his small body afloat. Suzette wanted to tell her the truth, but Lily had a recital coming up. How could the humoresques he'd selected for her to play, or how would the humoresques he'd selected her to play sound in the hands of a kid who just learned her poor Ludwig had suffered a slow, terrible death? You know, Cole says, I believe they will join Ludwig at the farm. The big farm in the east? He lets out a breath. Sure, you bet. Half an hour later, they leave the Buick in the parking lot, grab a couple of brochures at the Discovery Center, and hike the main trail to Devil's Creek. Cole shows Lily where to find the smooth pieces of limestone that don't break apart in your hands when you lift them. The rocks lie along the shore and the sandbanks inches beneath the clear water. What did I tell you? He scoops one up and sidearms it across the bend. The rock hops 3 times. 3 ringlets startle the surface. In a shaded cove on the far side, a mosquito cloud lifts and thins out. Isn't this place cool? It's okay. She mimics his stance, but squeezes her rock too hard, thinks too long. Her knees are bent, and she sticks her tongue out. When she lets the rock fly, it hits a cypress branch overhead and plunks into the shallows at her feet, a wild, puny toss. It's all right, he says. Hal Torrance didn't skip rocks until he was 10. Lily shrugs. When am I going to play his music? Soon. She has no idea what she's getting into, Cole thinks, but there's no need to alarm her about the technical difficulties of Hal Torrance's songs. We don't want to rush into it before you're ready. Well, when am I going to be ready? She asks. Patience, kid. I'll let you know. What do you do here? She says, besides throw rocks. Walk around mostly. He'd have his sketchbook out, write ideas for songs. You got a sketchbook, don't you? She shakes her head. Ask your ma to buy you one, he says. You'll need to pin down those melodies. He taps his left temple while they're still buzzing around. Lily twirls and stomps. Mud slides up around her sandals and splatters her ankles. In navy shorts, argyle vest over a white t-shirt, and rachis with shreds of grass trapped in the side buckles, she's not exactly dressed for a hike. but she threw on what her ma left out for her on the bed, and Cole didn't want to make a fuss. I used to think my dad was a pirate, Lily says. That's so childish. What do you think he is now? Engineer, she nods to herself. Bet you he's an electrical engineer. They leave Devil's Creek, scramble up a steep bank, and follow the path to a footbridge. Someone has placed a lost key on one of the cedar posts. Behind them, cyclists have cut trails in the dirt with their mountain bikes. Lily grabs the key off the post. What were you and Mom arguing about last night? What'd you hear? She shrugs. Last night, while Cole was at the upright, showing Lily a few tricks he'd learned on the road, Suzette started in about his drinking. He'd recently come back from a month-long tour with Jimmy Fletcher's band, gigging in New York and Boston, and they'd spent an extra week in the Berkshires playing for this rich tycoon who wanted to entertain business clients in his hilltop villa. The money was good, the music was good, the drinks were good. On tour, he'd drink a little before the show and more after the show, trying to keep up with everybody. And back home, he kept drinking because he didn't want the sweet feeling he got from touring to end. Sensing Suzette was about to rail on him at the party, he marched Lily into her room and told her to put on her headphones and listen to some Oscar Peterson. She played one of the trio albums live at the Stratford Shakespearean Festival. She must have turned it off too soon, though. Nothing for you to worry about, he says to her now. Grown-up stuff. What stuff? Lily says. Why'd you make me go into my room? Well, you know. He takes the key from her and sets it back on the post. When your ma and I haven't seen each other for a while, it takes us some time to find our groove. A few trees along the main trail are painted with red dots for a scavenger hunt. Arrows chalked onto the footpath point the way to buried treasure. What a silly game. Lily drops a stick off the bridge, and it sails down through the air and floats on the current. They veer from the trail and pass clumps of prickly pear and uprooted oaks. Floods sweep through every now and then and leave tangles of branches with city garbage hanging from them like ornaments. Grocery bags, beer cans, styrofoam cups. You can see the flood line on the trunks of elms that grow out of the creek bed. Cedar elms, scrawny things, not like the big stately elms that grow up north. Their leaves shimmer like confetti, and debris cling to their trunks 4 or 5 feet high in places. At the bottom of a narrow slope, they reach a sinkhole in the limestone. Cole picks Lily up from under her shoulders and sets her down on the other side. And then he jumps over it himself, kicking in the gravel with his heel, an old habit. He hears a rustling as the gravel vanishes into the hole. When he looks up, Lily's staring at him. The sunlight on her argyle sweater vest brings out the amber flecks in her eyes. Sometimes, depending on the light or what she's wearing, her eyes appear yellowish or hazel. Today they're the color of new pennies. Watch out. Don't want to step on those. He lifts her over a mesquite shrub bristling with thorns. When they return to the water's edge, Lily goes looking for another stone to throw. She loves the outdoors, getting her knees dirty, letting her legs get speckled with mud. Sometimes in the park near their apartment, she'll dig out an ant or pill bug and feed it to a spider by dropping the sucker into the web. The spider will crawl out from its hiding place to inject its poison and spin its web around the stunned prey, sheathing it in a silk cocoon. Cole's poison is a flask of wild turkey he carries in his hip pocket, taking a sip every now and then, enjoying the sour taste on his chapped lips, the warmth blooming in his chest. What's in there? Lily says after he's taken a long pull. Didn't Mom say you weren't supposed to drink alcohol? You're right. He puts the flask in his pocket. Let's keep walking. Other than picking her nose on occasion, Lily has no bad habits. She protects her hands, always keeps her nails clean and trimmed. When they venture farther into the ravine, she doesn't dig for ants or pill bugs. She drags the toe of her sandal through the mud, nudging pebbles into the water, then turns to make sure he's still following her. She seems to be chewing over something in her mind. Finally, she stops at a narrow turn where someone has fashioned a crossing with 3 flat stones. You and Mom gonna call it quits? don't know. He feels a catch in his throat. Hope not. If you do, can I come live with you? We'll see. Her eyes catch him again, focused in the ravine's filtered light. Hey kid, don't go thinking this has anything to do with you. I know. They tease her at school for not having a father. The girls really rub it in, the little brats. He tells her to pay them no mind. Their fathers aren't worth the boots they walk around in. They return to the creek and follow the water's edge toward the old mill. Used to be a ranch house by the mill. Cow trails still lead from a barbed wire fence down to the water, but the cattle and house are long gone. What remains is a stone foundation half swallowed by undergrowth. A longhorn skull lies in the center, sun-bleached, with small rocks piled around it. Live oaks and ash junipers, what they call cedar in this part of the state, cast a mottled shade over the banks. Lilies tipping over a large stone that looks more like a chunk of concrete, maybe part of the foundation that has gotten washed off. It has pebbles and glass caked to its underside when a cottonmouth shoots out from the creek, slides through the mud, and comes to rest between her feet. Under the rock she's lifted. Don't you move, Lily. He struggles to keep his voice calm, though his heart is already clocking in his chest. Lily usually does as she's told. Smart girl. She's been out in the woods so many times, camping and hiking in the hill country. Doesn't startle easily. She freezes there with her leg in the air, knee bent, the toe of her huarache still holding the rock, its shadow covering the cottonmouth. The snake's oily black, maybe 3 feet, much thicker and nastier than your average bull snake. Cole hasn't seen one in the ravine in years. Neighbors say all sorts of critters are floating in on the runoff after they paved the parking lot at the new Walmart, though. Shame they had to build one so close to the ravine. Figure it was only a matter of time before the venomous snakes got flushed out of hiding. What kind is it? He tells her. The snake lies beneath the rock, not yet taking up its defensive coil. Long as she doesn't startle it, he can grab her. I'm coming to you. Thanks.
First time I saw Karen, she was seated in the dining area at the Sagebrush, not with a table of other participants, but with a loaf of bread. I never asked her what that meant, but it surely meant something. And so, be advised that all participants should surely consider the melding of this beautiful natural setting and the creative juices that flow therefrom. Karen?
We want to know about the loaf of bread.
I was thinking the same
I'm trying to remember what that was about. Oh, I know. I just didn't have the kind of bread I wanted. And so I went and got a loaf of Graniac or something at that cool grocer that John took me to.
Sid's?
Anyway.
Sid's, yeah.
Sid's.
Yeah. And so I thought, if I'm going to have decent toast, I'll just... And I shared. I did share. So, okay.
Not with me, you did.
I'm sure I offered. Okay. So I'm going to take a detour away from fiction, and this is a bit of memoir. And the context I suppose I ought to give you before I start in on this is that my adult son had a psychotic episode about 4 years ago. 4 years ago this summer. And so I'm writing about, his journey and my journey alongside him, what I was there for. And this piece I'm going to read is experimental. I've been finding this is hard material to access. So somebody suggested, some smart person, I think it was Jan Becker. And she said, why don't you try writing in second person? And so I did. And so this bit is written in second person. Now likely I'll switch this back to first person, but it's fairly new. So, right now it's still second person, so I'll go ahead and read it the way it's written here. And hopefully I'll be able to see it. Today you attend the first meeting of a weekly workshop for families of individuals with mental illness. The course takes place in a large, nondescript conference room situated in the front lobby of a hospital exclusive to mentally ill patients requiring long-term or permanent care. A long rectangular table surrounded by high-backed chairs sits in the center of the space. As you scan the room, you see brightly colored homemade works of art, the sorts of projects your kids did in art camp when they were younger. Whimsically drawn words like love and life and happiness seem to dominate the majority of the creations, and you know these are patients' works. The framed pieces line the 3 walls of the room, the 4th is glass, in a perfect eye-height line, which somehow seems paradoxical to you. You're early, the first to arrive, and you're faced with the problem of where to sit. Despite your punctuality, you're here under duress at the insistence of your husband, who would go in your stead if he didn't have to fly most Sundays. You will attend a 3-hour session every Sunday for the next few months, and you will dread every moment. The information is copious, interesting, and occasionally useful, but you'll resist, fighting immersion, letting your mind wander, even playing with your phone under the table on occasion. This is not like you at all. You're known for your attentiveness as an audience member, even when what's presented bores you senseless. You sit in the center of the table, closest to the door. You take some deep breaths, telling yourself that you will adjust. Once you meet the rest of the attendees and get into the rhythm, your discomfort will fade. But you're wrong. In fact, with every session, your discomfort grows until eventually it morphs into agitation. As the weeks pass, you find yourself selecting seats that are farther and farther from the facilitators, who sit at the head of one end of the table, until one day you make a point to arrive so early that you can sit at the opposite end. On this particular Sunday, as it happens, attendance is light, though the group has been asked since the first day to limit absences, the reason for which being that each group is limited to 16, and it wouldn't be fair to those who were put on a waiting list for the next workshop if those who were given a slot don't remain faithfully present. When everyone is seated, a couple of empty seats on either side of the table separate you from the rest of the group. One of the facilitators, the one you don't like, asks you to relocate to be more connected to the group. By nature, you are not a rebellious person. In fact, you're quite agreeable and a self-described rule follower. But without a moment's hesitation, you shake your head and say, "No, I like it down here. Makes me feel powerful." And that's true. You've surprised yourself, and in that surprise is a potent sense of formidability. The facilitator you don't like, who happens to be the older of the two, both of whom have seriously mentally ill adult children, scowls at you. She is short and round, with a dome of silver hair and the authority of years of suffering and sacrifice. Your defiance will cause her to treat you as a special project from now on. You shrug and force a tight smile. A few of the other members of the group laugh, but the dominant effect of the moment is discomfort. Why are you behaving like such a jerk? This, of all settings, is a place where you should be kind and cooperative. The others, the ones who've come for the same reason you have, are so clearly in pain, all of them living lives of uncertainty and worry, as every night they lie in their beds, wondering if their child or spouse or sister or brother will ever return from the dark and fear-filled places they've been taken by their own broken minds. The facilitators use the majority of the first session to lay the ground rules, which include some privacy requests you heard at the support group, no discussing personal stories outside the sessions. Then they explain how the course is structured. Finally, they say that all the facilitators in the program were at one time participants like you, which makes them uniquely qualified to instruct, counsel, and empathize. They are both older than you, one in her 50s perhaps, the other in her 60s, maybe 70s. The younger, a redhead, is the first to tell her child's story, which is heartbreaking and terrifying and has gone on for decades. The older of the two, the one you will grow to dislike, is a bit louder and more assertive in her telling, but the effects and the duration are the same as the redhead's story. Their lives have revolved around their children's lives and illnesses for longer than your son has been alive. When the older one is finished, you wish to flee, but a glance at the clock shows a half hour remains. Our time together is precious, the older one says, so let's begin. We spend the half hour reading aloud, round robin style, from thick and cumbersome 3-ring binders. You try, oh, there was the first person, wasn't it? Sorry. You try to follow along, to absorb the material before you, but your need to escape keeps wrestling your focus away from the words and charts and back to the clock. So you miss your cue when it is your turn to read until the young mother-to-be sitting next to you gives your arm a gentle squeeze. Before you are free to go, the gray-haired facilitator announces that next time you will all tell your stories. She says this as if she's offering a precious gift, as if you and the rest of the group are dying to share the narratives of your suffering relatives the way she did. But this is the last thing you want to do, and it's not what you signed up for. They specifically said it was a forum for conveying information designed to help the families of the mentally ill, not a support group. Why should you have to share your son's story? Perhaps you'll object. At the very least, you'll be brief. The following Sunday comes too soon, and as the other men and women around the table tell their stories, you realize you're alone in your desire not to do the same. They are all so thankful to be here. They are all so in need of speaking to people who are dealing with the same problems they are, and behave as though they've been deprived of oxygen to the point of near suffocation. And the closer it gets to your turn, the more you want to run. What are you doing here? You're not one of these people. You don't know what's wrong with your son yet. There has been no diagnosis. But you know he is not like their sons and daughters and wives and husbands. He's not as broken. This isn't forever. He's coming back. He'll be normal again. Oh God, it's your turn. Okay, make it short. My adult son had a psychotic episode and was hospitalized for 2 weeks. Gray-haired facilitator interrupts. What's your son's name and age? You forgot the instruction to begin this way. You blink. I'm sorry, his name is Kai. Kyle? No, Kai. K-A-I. Thank you. He's 26. Processing this data, the white-haired facilitator nods knowingly. And you know what she's thinking, what she's certain she's diagnosed, and it infuriates you. Statistically speaking, your son's age is typical for the first psychotic episode of the onset of schizophrenia. You make eye contact with her when you say, he has no diagnosis. You wait a beat and continue. My husband and I are his legal guardians, so he's living back home. He's seeing both a psychiatrist and a psychologist. That's it. Done. Gray hair says, is he taking medication? No. Her eyebrows rise, and again, you know what she's thinking. Without medication, he'll have another break. He had 2 shots of Invega Sustenna, but the second shot wore off at the end of August. You feel no need to tell her that Kai has refused to take any more drugs, at least not prescribed ones. The red-headed facilitator speaks, I've never heard of Invega Sustenna. Given her veteran status, you find this surprising. It's an antipsychotic administered as a 30-day time-release injection. She sits back. Wow, that's great. No daily fights to get them to take their meds. Gray hair turns toward the redhead and smiles. Yeah, just 1 fight a month. Then she looks at you, and how is he? Why won't they move on? Depressed, but he's working. You add this as if it's proof your son is in no danger of another psychotic episode, as if people with jobs don't have mental illness, and you conveniently forget that depression is mental illness too. Finally done with you, they move on. Of the course's 12 Sundays, you'll attend 10, while your husband attends 2, and he will get far more out of his 2 days than you'll get in your 10. Or rather, he will take more. Upon returning from his first meeting, he enthusiastically describes how the group paired off, one pretending to hear a hallucinated voice, the other pretending to be that voice. You feel a small bit of jealousy because all you've done during your sessions is listen or read. He tells you the point of it was to demonstrate how forceful those voices can be, directing the hallucinator to do things he or she might not otherwise do. Fighting those voices, he says, refusing to follow their instructions is even more difficult than we non-hallucinators can imagine. Kai doesn't have schizophrenia, you say. We don't know that, he says. He denies hearing voices, but he's seen UFOs and summer snow. You walk away. When you return to the group the following week, you hear all about what a wonderful contributor your husband is, and how funny. You smile and say, yes, he's got a wonderful sense of humor, but you're annoyed. You know you've no one to blame but yourself for your shitty attitude and poor impression, but you're still fucking annoyed. For the remainder of the course, the facilitators and other participants will inquire about Gary at least once during every session. Months later, the course long since completed, you'll attend a fundraiser for the organization that sponsors the program. Gary contributes a personalized portrait for the highest bidder. You're just there. And as you mill about the venue, you spot the gray-haired facilitator. You spend the evening avoiding her and never say hello. So now that I've plunged you to a place you did not expect to go, I'm going to try to lift you back up a little bit. So that was September 4 years ago. This is March 30th, 2017. It's very brief. Just a few months ago. And it's first person. The rest of it's first person. Kai has chosen today to begin an exercise routine. He's gained weight in the couple of years he's been on Lexapro and remembers how fit he felt when he worked out during his months in rehab. We have commercial quality machines in our little air-conditioned one-car garage that's now